Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show from the Extreme Studios here at the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me from Central Florida, I have the young 20-something Professor Pixel. And from the great Midwest, of course, I have RDV. And RDV, a few years ago here on the Extreme Movie Show, we covered what we thought would be a very groundbreaking movie that really didn't do too well in terms of our numbers, relatively speaking. And that was Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. Wow, how things changed since then, how incredible the movies have been, and how everything's gone. We thought, with the next one coming out later this year, Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then I guess Part 2, whether it's a unique film or not, we said, hey, let's go ahead and go in order and let's see what happens for the second one. And you know what? I thought to myself, since I haven't seen this in 23 years since it was out in theaters, I remember Dove's Cruise got a bit of the longer hair. I was like, well, maybe Vanilla Sky was around this time. I don't know. A motorcycle. I remember like Dream States and all that too. But Pixel would appreciate the fact that this movie, has nothing but candles and fog machines everywhere. It's like I'm watching Forever Night again from Up All Night and USA Network, or like what we've covered here before. I'm trying to keep a straight face saying it. Dark Shadows, the revival, because it reminds me of it. This is not a Mission Impossible film. Let's put it out there for everybody to understand. It's a John Woo film that has Mission Impossible characters, including Tom Cruise, into it. And yes, the Mission Impossible films did change, and in my opinion, got better over the series.
They did get better.
Yeah, this is an interesting film. It's not a bad one, but it puts me to sleep. And RDV, I want to start with you because you're the bedrock of action here with me on Tuesday nights here on Extreme Movie Show. What's your initial take on this film?
It's still as fucking awesome as when I first saw it in the theater, bro.
It's very stylish, bro, isn't it?
23 years later, bro. Of course, this is a movie that spawned the MTV Movie Awards spoof with Ben Stiller. It's Tom Cruise's stunt double.
Yep.
Just going back and just seeing everybody's in this cast, it's like, it's just, I forgot that Dougray Scott was actually the bad guy in this, and Ving Rhames is just, coming back to reprise his role. I was going back and looking at the first one. The first one, man, Emilio Estevez obviously killed. John Voight was in the first one. This one, they decided to bring in Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yes, this is when Sir Anthony
was young.
Well, relatively speaking, because he's in his 80s now, I think. So this is basically when he went nuclear. He could not be stopped. I mean, he was showing up in everything. Because remember, he's fresh off of Zorro and so a bunch of other things too. So he was great in it. Yeah, I thought.
The whole exchange with him is like, he's like, well, why don't you want to use her? Like, are you fucking her or something?
Yeah.
I love that he knew right away. But yeah, it's interesting. You brought up in a group chat. That's like, the fucking doves, man. The fucking doves. I forgot all the doves. The doves, the fight scene towards the end there. It was just so over the top cheesy, but it's Tom Cruise cheesy. It's Mission Impossible. It's meant to be that. They embraced it all the way through. They used Thandie Newton to her strengths because she's not really a physical girl. She's not really that. She's skinny, but she's good at sleight of hand using her beauty, and I respect that. So compared to what they do today, now they would try to make that she's the one that's capable, and then Tom Cruise would be the one, But I'm not saying in other movies, the fact that Tom Cruise still has control over this is the only reason that the Mission Impossible movies are still are being awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's a solid film too. I agree with you. It's just different because remember Brian De Palma did the first one, and that one was slick and stylish. And we're not here to argue whether or not these movies or this franchise, how it's different or doesn't live up to the spirit of the original one there, because we got to understand it's different there too. But Pixel, you're kind of squealing over a little bit as a young 20-something here on this channel that doesn't know about any of this old stuff here, and that's why you're part of it. What's your initial take? Have you seen this before?
If I had, I'd forgotten it, and honestly, for a good reason, because there's a lot of good stuff in here, but the way it's shot is it's bothering me. The director, John Woo, please no. Other films, later films, you're right, they do get better, and there are so many great stars in here. Richard Roxburgh, he is fantastic in a show called Rake. I watched all of that. where he plays Cleaver Green, and it's totally different to see him as this trying to be this tough bodyguard type man. But all the stars in this, they do a great job. The mission is fun. The story is fine, but the way it's shot is so distracting. And I don't know. I didn't appreciate that at all.
I want to jump right into that because, you know, one of we obviously the three of us disagree on films and stuff, and we talk themes and what we liked, and we compare it to other things. And one of the big differences we had a while ago on a film comes to mind, and that's where we're talking about Excalibur. To me, one of the better gold standard sword sorcery movies. If I recall correctly, RDV, you weren't the biggest fan of it compared to some other ones because your taste runs a little different for that. And I would say that, you know, Pixel, you and I really like, say, Dark Shadows and its storytelling, but that involved Dan Curtis. It was a Dan Curtis production, not a Quinn Martin one, and it kept up with what the show tried to do. I think with the John Woo films is that if you don't know what a John Woo film is and you see this, especially after the first one, you're going, what the fuck? Doves. And I'll get to that later. But in all seriousness, Pixel, you and I covered every single episode and movie of Twin Peaks. Now you understand what watching a David Lynch thing is. Because some of it's
I've sadly seen Eraserhead too.
Well, it's themes. And that's what John Woo does. And RDV, you and I have talked to us about a bit. John Woo's Hong Kong, right? You and I have talked about the difference between, say, Hong Kong and some of the other different types of martial arts films out there. And this is what John Woo does in his films.
Yeah, going into John Woo, man, like, you know, his films, obviously, we covered Hard Target here before.
Yeah.
Exactly same style.
Exactly.
Face Off, similar style.
I like Face Off.
Broken Arrow, same style. It's honestly, I don't have a problem with it. I actually like it stylized, you know.
I do too.
It's cookie.
I liked it.
Everything's cookie cutter today, or they're trying to rip off somebody else, and they're not doing a good job. I love this movie as much as I love all the other ones. I still like it better than the first one. The first one had its moments, but I love this. I mean, and the one thing I love about the Jason Bournes and, you know, as far as the Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible movies, it's the motorcycles, man. The chases on them. They took what normally would be a car chase with all the James Bond stuff, and they said, you know what? Let's do motorcycles, because a lot of people love motorcycles, and not only that, they had their little cars chasing here too. They're driving the Mercedes Benzes, I think they were they, or Porsches? I can't remember where they're driving in the when he first. She said, "You got to catch me first." Were they driving the Benzes, or was it? I forget what it was. But anyway, regardless, though, the whole fight scene at the end, that's the one thing that always sticks in my mind when it comes to this movie. It's like I always forget about the whole poison and all that stuff. I could care less about that. It's the end where they're driving their random motorcycles towards each other. They jump off, tackle each other, and then just fighting on the sand. And it is just over the top, insane, crazy action. And this reminds me of a lot of those action movies in Hong Kong. They do similar stuff.
So we're talking about styles, for example. Body Double, I keep going back to 1983 or 4 from Brian De Palma. I think it's a fantastic, incredible film. And there's certain things in there. And I always talk about how in the 80s you had a certain sense of, I'm not even going to say eroticism, although that borders on the edge of it when you talk about being a voyeur and watching people. And you definitely have a lot of that. And I think it's a very tongue-in-cheek sort of movie. You had that a little bit in Mission Impossible with the way some of the shots were there, because again, it's De Palma's eye. With John Woo, all the stuff that you mentioned, we've seen it before if we've seen these other films. And to me, what I thought was interesting here is we have the same kind of template for the setup. You have your random opening gambit that may or may not be related to what's going on. It's a complete Bond ripoff or anything. And frankly, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. Where he's not rock climbing. No, gentlemen, ladies, whatever you identify as, free climbing because there's no rope. I didn't mind that at all because, hey, even though Shatner might have did it in Star Trek 4 or whatever it was, Tom Cruise, I mean, this heroin, it's going to be one of these films. When he gets to the top, he gets his message with the product placement sunglasses. That was kind of silly. But when they start up with the being in Spain, and if you've ever been to Spain, the country's just rich and it's historical, and the different areas of Spain, different things go on, and whether flamenco is appropriately used or appropriated for the scene. when you just see characters doing something without friggin' talking, like you see how he's got to go basically convince her to work with him, and we see them just kind of looking at each other like they're eye fucking each other across a crowded room and stuff, and you're like, it almost does take on like a dream thing between the cuts of the ladies dancing, the music playing. Oh, you find out she's a thief, and then of course to your point about her being thin, RDV, when they get caught, they have to figure their way out of it. And it's a nice little kind of back and forth, whether they're not yelling or bitching or arguing with each other. You could say they're both trying to outwit each other, and she uses her sexual wares to kind of maybe get up on him, but not. Then it leads to a car chase scene. And you know what, RDV? This is good shit. And I got to say this, Pixel. I know you said you weren't a fan of the filming stuff, but look, the one thing I did not remember, and I have to say this, and I'll let you guys kind of talk about it here, as much as I think the action scenes are great in the more recent Mission Impossible films, I forgot how good the action scenes in here and how they looked. Despite some of the slow motion, flamboyant stuff, the car chase scene, even though you've seen somebody saying, "Hey, pull over," no, it's a cardigan kind of scene when they're chasing each other, that was done really good. I thought. I disagree, Pixel. I think the action scenes in here were filmed great.
I mean, I was too distracted by their whole by the whole fact that their chase was stupid. They were on the side of a cliff. Yes, she kept hitting, but what did she expect as they kept going and people were going to be on the other side of the road? It was idiotic.
And I gotta say, they're living on the edge. That's extreme. That's what this movie is.
Yeah, and then they don't care about the consequences.
Because
it's not like in Bond when he's being chased by a bad guy. She's not supposed to be a bad guy. She's just doing it to play with him.
No.
She's doing it to play with him.
No, they are flirting. That's what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's stupid. It's stupid to do that with Carl. And you know what else is stupid? Towards the end of the movie, when he doesn't kill the bad guy, and then he conveniently has a second gun in the stand, and he's going to kick it up after throwing the tube and shoot him then. And there's no consequences. I expected her to get shot. I thought maybe it was going to be tragedy. But no, it's so stupid.
It's so stupid. That's what you sound like, bro.
Don't get it. You just don't get it.
No, so that was a common trait, not just John Woo. If you don't like that, there's a ton of movies like that. Even Bond movies where he thinks he thinks he's okay, and then someone else pops up at the end.
Yeah.
It's a trope. It's gonna happen. But the guy did you see the guy, he hit his head on the rock. Most people would be dead. But the fact this is an extreme movie, the guy is alive a little bit and he pulls a gun.
Yeah, he should have killed him. The guy says it. And so he goes for the kill, and there aren't any consequences for leaving him alive. If they did that now, which I have seen more recent Mission Impossible movies, there would be something to it. There'd be some drawback. And there should be consequences for your stupid actions.
Yeah, for James Bond too, right? Wouldn't you agree? All the crap that James Bond gets away with?
Well, Rob and I go over the degradation of the Bond franchise that can't top Her Majesty's Secret Service. None of those films top that. They can't. No, because it's the only one with any sense of drama. It's the only one with any sense of characterization.
So, Pixel, this is a fictional movie. If you want nonfiction, go watch something.
I didn't say nonfiction. But it was fine until that stupid kickflip for no reason. Even her deciding, you know what, there's only one thing of this virus left. Rather than give it to him or risk getting shot, I'll shoot it into myself to make myself more valuable. She has a good line in here where she says, "I'm worth $36 million or something," and that's good. That's good. But. Yeah, well, but I can't bring myself to care by the end of that because it's such stupid moves like that. With first the car scene and then that, but the rest of the movie is fine. What I loved about this movie was when we had characters like McCloy, the person, John McCloy, am in a business to make money. And that scene was great. Them using the faces to go ahead and trick him, and then at the same time we think Tom Cruise is with Tandy Newton, but no, No, because it's actually just Dougray Scott.
Switcheroo.
It was
The
actually
old switcheroo. That's good. That I enjoyed.
I enjoyed Nicolas Cage versus John Travolta in this movie. Because
That's face off.
This was what it was. They traded faces, bro.
Yeah, no,
That's a great name,
I
too.
can see that. I can see that. But that's what I enjoyed about this film. I love the opening, especially because of that. Because I was thinking, okay, this is a little odd. Tom Cruise is acting weird. But then when that's revealed and the plane's going down and you have the one pilot just stir enough to try to get the plane up, but it's a tragedy, that was a good opening. That was a solid, oh crap, what's the term? We use something else, not just opening.
It was
Sting?
It was a great cliffhanger.
No. But no, that's what's good. But there's just so many little stupid things that were there for no reason. That's what bothers me.
That scene with the pilot when he wakes up, that's the cliffhanger opening. I would say with Stallone's cliffhanger. Don't look down, and he lets her go and she dies.
Yeah, so let me take a step back here and talk about the 80s for a minute, because we always like to say we're an 80s based channel, and that was my formative years, and we compare everything to it. Well, in the 80s, you had a reboot of the TV show, and there were very few TV shows being remade. I've mentioned Mission Impossible being one of them. I mentioned Leave It to Beaver being another one. And again, you could argue whether or not it was worth it and all that too. Of course, there was plenty of talk about Dark Shadows, which would happen in the revival, which again, Professor Pixel and I have covered that. Check that out, season 1. In the 80s, you pretty much had this theme that's a little different than the 70s and 90s. And talking about a couple loose things here on my time altogether. When we do our occasionally every other month James Bond review to watch them all in order, like I say, we've been up through, we're overdue for the next one, which is I believe Octopussy. We've talked about how the Bond template's been set. We've talked how there's been different Bond actors and how it's changed and what we've liked and did. Moonraker, of course, being the one that, while commercially most successful, probably the most stupidest one. I find it vastly entertaining on a really horrible level. But I don't know. I can't get enough of Moonraker. Even though I still think Under Majesty's Secret Service is the best Bond, and that's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about how in the 80s things changed. In the 80s, James Bond was going through its transitions, and people say Roger Moore played Bond one or too many times, but he's willing to do it, and he's of course a different actor than the other Bonds before or after. Timothy Dalton, has a long history with Bond and refused to take it and ended up doing it later in the 80s. So there was a problem with the Bond franchise. And while action movies that many that Artie and I have covered some, starting off here, again with the martial arts ones here, there was a movie called Remo Williams in 1985 that they said, you know what, let's try to do a different angle on the super spy sort of franchise. They're based off of the Destroyer books. There's a shit ton of them by that time. They made it. I thought it was a fairly decent film. Some of the characters, but it was updated at the time. There's this great idea of the time when they were redoing the Statue of Liberty for like a year or so. Big, huge fight on it. And it's G, or I guess you'd call it PG rated stuff at the time. And it's got Fred Warren in it, who's tremendous, and we all love him, right? But the problem with it wasn't the movie itself, or that people didn't necessarily like it, because frankly, people didn't really like this Mission Impossible film. It's the fact that people got so conditioned to action movies being one way that you got anything different, for the most part, you wouldn't like it. You come into Mission Impossible 2 here, you've got something that's totally different because it's a John Woo film, not a Mission Impossible film. And it's only the second one, like 3 or 4 years after the last one. So people don't expect. And RDV, you and I spent a lot of time talking about it. Pixel, you and I not so much, about how films have changed since roughly about 2000, when all of a sudden all the, and I keep bringing it up all the time, and I don't mean to be demeaning about it, but I just basically say that the comic book franchise type movies has dominated the box office. Mm-hmm. You do not have that variety. So it's interesting, because I look back at this and think it's a very good action film. You could pinpoint to 2000 as the year roughly the action movies generally declined in mass, and you don't have them anymore. So the dislike for this one, or for Pixel, for kind of what you're saying, that was out there at the time, which surprised the hell out of me, because I still think it's an entertaining film.
Yeah, Pixel, you should never watch any Chuck Norris or Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. You will not like them.
What do you mean? I've seen those. I've enjoyed them. I'm saying that what
They're the
they've
same
done in
qual-
this
they're the
film
s- they're the s-
specifically,
They're the
it's not
same
the
story
same
types.
plot.
It's the same quality in storytelling. Invasion USA. As Chuck Norris defeat the bad guy with bazooka, he runs up and gives him a kick.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's
one
fine.
kick.
So
I didn't complain about all the kicking because there's tons of kicking.
But you didn't like the slow motion stylized stuff. Is it a specific scene early on that you went, shit, I don't like this? I mean, let's try to pinpoint it down. I'm curious.
I mean, there's.
You don't like the car chase, you said.
No, I didn't enjoy the car chase.
Okay, I understand you don't like.
No, them flirting is fine. They had good chemistry. Tom Cruise and Tandy Newton, they had good chemistry when they were actually talking. But using cars as battering rams together to not actually kill, but just maybe a little bit. It just seems ridiculously stupid.
It's a comic book trope too. They do the comics all the time. Batman and Catwoman. They're not using cars, but they're.
Oh, wait a minute, guys.
No, they are crashing vehicles.
Time out.
Yeah.
Didn't, and probably one of the best, in my opinion, superhero movies ever made, the original Superman. Didn't Lois Lane jump off the cliff to prove, or was that Superman 2, that Clark was going to be Superman? I mean, wasn't that flirting?
She jumped out of the building.
Right.
And then in the actual comic book series, Man of Steel miniseries, she drove her car purposely into the pier just to get Superman to come rescue her so she could interview him.
To call his bluff.
Yes.
That's flirting.
Yes. But that's
you're right,
still not.
Pixel.
That wasn't harming anyone. That wasn't getting in the way of the road. That was risking Lois's life, but it wasn't risking his life, and he was playing along with it.
I'm pretty sure it's risking.
And he should know better. Tom Cruise should know better.
Oh, well, I just say this: it's awesome stunt.
Yeah.
And that's what John Woo's style is doing stunts, awesome extreme stunts, and that's what I like about this movie is it's extremely stylized, but also this is the beginning of the big explosion stunts. Everybody goes back and for me, what are the giant stunts you see? For me, it was GoldenEye, 1996. That was the beginning of the giant explosions, tanks, cars, all stuff. The suave guy. Cruise said, "Hold my beer," pretty much, and said,
"I think it was Commando myself."
Yeah. Commando, yes, but I'm saying in the '90s, you can see it really they took off. Like I said, overall, it was harmless flirting. You say it's stupid, yes, logic, because you would never do it yourself. You're not crazy like them. They're extreme junkies.
Be young and crazy in love, the stupid things you do.
It
makes sense.
I mean the free climbing is like a ridiculously risky thing, but at least I could.
It's not ridiculous.
At least I could. It's not ridiculous.
No, it's not, and here's why. The one thing that does not ever get talked about with James Bond films or people in these roles is that James Bond, even though they made joke of it, and I'll bring up the Pierce Brosnan one. I always say he looks good in a suit. I like Pierce Brosnan. He's a likable guy. I don't think he's manly like a Sean Connery, and I don't think he's as charming as Roger Moore, but they had to be because that's what they were. Whereas he's like a hybrid. I mean, no disrespect to any of them. I love them all. But the problem with the Bond character, the people that are real hardcore Bond fans, is they don't really, and again, it's not so much the character in the book versus the movie. A person who is a spy or engaged in life or death activities has a very cavalier attitude that in the Bond films, when Judi Dench started playing him or whatever, came in, basically started lambasting. And this is when the Bond films started to pivot. They talked about him being, a dinosaur, relic of the Cold War, woman hater sort of thing, and all that. And it takes somebody who's like that to be successful in that position. And so you are used to, and I'm not making fun of the word here when I say extreme. You're used to these extreme sorts of activities because 1, that's all you know. 2, you're good at it. So 3, your threshold is a lot higher. But 4, it's the only way you get any mental juice for it. That's why all these things are supposed to be funny about somebody used to be a Secret Service agent and now is in suburbia and trying to live the normal life. That's unrealistic and could never happen. It's like it's exactly. So for them, you look at it as a stupid activity. For them and their world, that's harmless flirting, and that makes complete sense because that's what they need. And she is a thief. She's the bad dude's ex-lover, piece of ass. You're the one with the dead ass photo there, which makes perfect sense here.
She's
But
literally
they live their life like that, one second at a
Yeah.
time. It's extreme. That's how they get off.
If you
Yeah.
let me finish, I was going to say I can accept that because of pretty much what you just said. But the putting other people at risk. When we talked about John Wick and he's in the streets and they're shooting, that's because they have to. That's because it's life or death. They don't. I mean, it's not okay, but it's what he has to do because he's going to be killed. Here, they were risking each other's lives on a cliffside for no reason. It wasn't, you have to catch me. It was me punching you off of a cliff.
Sir, can you stop yelling? I want to quickly point out that John Wick is not a cop. He's an assassin. He risks innocent people's lives so he can save his own life. He's a selfish prick.
That's right. Exactly. An assassin.
Oh, so he should just die. Got it. He should just allow them to kill him.
Well, if he was a moral person, obviously he's not very moral. If he's just gonna go, I'm gonna kill the bad guy, but I don't care about the kids in the cars being shot at while we're in a gunfight. I have no control over it.
You know what I heard John Wick say in the deleted scene, and I wanted to talk about this tonight. I didn't get a chance to.
He said, "Pixel needs to stop defending me."
It was the crash zoom in face when he accidentally shot a little kid that was walking a dog. Thankfully, the dog lived, and he said, "Bad for you, good for me." I'm just saying. So he's not a very nice guy, but because
I've never seen that scene. But
I know you didn't because I'm being facetious here. But look, you're triggered over the fact that you think that they're risking each other's lives. They're flirting. Okay, it's like if we're boxing and we're not going on for a full fight, we've got pads on.
There are better ways to do it, and that doesn't change
opinion
the
about it.
that
But not
doesn't
for
change
somebody in
the
that situation.
absurdity
What is he
of
supposed
the
to do?
end.
Ask her out on a date for Starbucks?
No,
he had less than 20 hours or whatever it was.
There could have been better chases that they could have done, but they wanted to do it on a cliffside. Which
yes, exactly.
I still think it's stupid. That's not going to change what I'm thinking. I'm still going to say that was a stupid choice. I did not enjoy that.
Sir, how old are you? Are you 85 years old? Are you just young kids? They're gonna get someone killed.
Yes, I am. When you have someone who is like Ethan Hunt, he's trying to be the hero. He's trying to be be careful.
No, he's not trying to be the hero. He's trying to do anything he can, any way possible, manipulate her to be deceitful, any way to get her, to break her, to work for him because he's got something
he wants to do. That's not true.
That's exactly what his mission.
Wait. You can tell that's not true because the whole scene with Anthony Hopkins after that, when he reveals, "Oh, you're not actually stealing, you're not actually recruiting the thief because she's a thief," that you assume that, and he gets visibly upset. He's very pissed off about it because he's catching feelings. No. He's caught feelings.
It's not feelings when you have sweet relations with somebody that you met and you've only known them for like less than a day or two. It's not. It's one night stand.
That's exactly what he was doing. That's why at the end he goes back to her. Oh, I have no idea where she is. He knows exactly where she is, and he goes to her because it's supposed to be that he's.
That's what it is.
It's not like James. Wait. It's not like James Bond when he hooked up with the girl from the first movie and the second one. The titles slipped my mind, but she came back, and it's like the only Bond girl to actually like fully come back in the old films.
So in the 70s,
but that was just 80s. A hookup. Exactly, he does not treat this like a hookup. No, he does not.
So I want to point out.
He's upset.
Hold on. I want to say I agree with both of you because he was visibly upset because he was lied to. He assumed he was supposed to recruit. He didn't realize he was going to be risking her life. She's, like you said, he also caught feelings for her too. He himself was
manipulated by somebody smarter than Anthony Hopkins.
Yes. So you are both correct. Can we shake hands?
No, I'm not shaking it. It's just I don't enjoy certain elements about this film.
The male goes through these incredible dances and displays for the woman to decide who's going to mount her. So for him, she's used to, in the animal sense, she can't just go with any sort of schlub. It's got to be a dude that shows her that it's worthy of her
and
genetic
it's
material, if you
it's
want to
been
call
that
it.
way.
So it had to be something extreme. It couldn't have been like, Tandy, you're like 40 kilos, and because we're in Europe, I'm saying kilos, which is about 100 pounds. And so, hey, you look kind of hot in that dress. Maybe if you want to, maybe we should sometime go get like or in Spain, maybe we should go get some of that, I don't know, paella or whatever it's called. Would that be cool? No, you need a guy driving a friggin' Porsche, smiling at you with the Tom Cruise $1 million buck smile and all that. You ram him a little bit, so you know what? You initiate. You're letting him know, hey, I'm testing you. Can you pass the test like a man? Are you going to cry
Dear
like a hurt
God.
little boy and go, oh, you're hitting my Porsche. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Like I
No,
said,
you're going to fucking put her down and save her life. Boom, you got me.
She is very much the Selena Kyle Catwoman, the 90s.
Yeah,
kind of
I would have,
throw junkie.
but by the end of that scene, if both of their cars fell off the cliff, they would have deserved it. Okay. That's, jeez.
And honestly, that would have been amazing.
The end.
I want to see where they go from there. I mean, I want to see where Bond's.
And I also didn't wait. I also
Okay.
didn't appreciate how the side characters didn't get as much. They should have gotten more.
You want them to get
well,
the rub
well,
more?
More screen time for him, because Luther, he's great. Wallace, he's great. They needed a little more time.
So they do in the future installments.
Yeah, I know they
Yes.
do.
So what the
But I'm
Australian
talking about
guys?
this film.
It's the second film, bro.
I know, but still,
So-
I can't judge.
So
I can't judge the series as a whole when I'm supposed to be only focusing on this one.
well, I want to point out to you that what you may not like as much as most other people, but at $125 million budget, came back with $546 million.
That's good for them.
Movie of the year, I
So
think,
it means that people really, really loved it. I'm curious to put the box office numbers up against the James Bond ones in the 2000s. Let's see.
Well, you'd have a tough time with that because the Bonds are still doing well, but basically, by the time you got The World Is Not Enough is that's my special love too. But once you got to oh God, the one with the scorpions and all that, is a Die Another Day, the Madonna one. That to me is the visible turning point for people shitting on the Bond franchise, because the opening's kind of cool. It's kind of Bondish. It's kind of really badass for like the first third of the film. Then it gets so completely dopey and asinine, you're going, what the fuck? And then what kicked it in its nuts and everything was when Jason Bourne came out. And people said, screw you. We don't need you to do this dumb shit. We're going to do our thing, which is like you, but modern times and better and smarter. And again, there's different types of movies. We briefly talked about this actually last week when we talked about Excalibur and European type of sword sandal movies that try to actually reach up to the literature versus other ones that don't. And we used even the Lord of the Rings, probably almost everybody's number one up there. There's a lot of people out there that think, in terms of writing, Lord of the Rings is, because it's pretty pedestrian and Christian in nature, that's somewhat boring, and it's not really indicative of what true sword and sorcerer would be, really anarchist and hedonistic and everything else there too.
So,
and there's two big camps, and it's like that with action films.
So I want to make a recommendation for next Sunday then. Since Pixel thinks this was a little bit too kind of crazy, let's go back to the original film, Notorious, with Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains, 1946. Exact same movie.
Objections.
Exact same movie. He has a race. She has a girl working. Gets something from the guy, and then they meet up at the horse track.
Sure.
And
Sure. I'm not going to complain about watching a Hitchcock film. Are you kidding? I'll absolutely watch that. That sounds fine with me.
So
I do want to point out, since we're going to go ahead and look at box office and stuff, it's also given a rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 56 by critics, and 42 with the audience. So while yes, it did make the money, you can't say that everybody just loved it, because that's how we started out talking about this.
Number one movie of the year.
A lot of people don't love it.
So when this came,
movie of the year.
So is this IMDb ratings of people who actually use IMDb, or are you going to?
It was Rotten Tomatoes I was looking at, but
like I said, I don't go off online ratings. I go off basically how much money it made. If it doubled its budget, like this movie did, Almost
That's
triple
silly
that,
because then we have to call Avatar the best movie ever made. Because
I'll just say it. There's a lot of people who liked it, went to go see it.
Yeah.
Now, and like I said, I just don't try. I don't really always trust online ratings because they.
I don't either, but I mean, when we're talking about how much money they made, it's
I know.
getting to the point. I'm just explaining why I didn't care for it.
True. That's reasonable. I'm just gonna let you know that in Notorious there is a car chase scene there, where they go off a cliff.
Yeah.
So you might like that one better.
No, that'll be interesting to take a look at because really, once you see enough films or read enough stuff, everything's just a variation on theme. So it's a question of what you feel compelled to be attracted to. And I know for me that a lot of stuff we reviewed here on the Xtreme Movie Show, no matter how obscure, if it's a rewatch for me or a first watch even, a lot of my original thoughts of why I might have liked something when I was younger still kind of remain. It's just that the reasons why might be a bit more clarified as I've gotten older. There's been very few things I've looked at and went, man, I don't get why I like that or thought it was good. And so to me, again, this is a pivotal time around 2000 when the action movies were changing, movies in general were. Also, let's not forget this is pretty much late 90s, early 2000s when the internet was starting to hit critical mass. So the delivery of information and scripts and what was upcoming totally changed how all this worked as far as viewer habits and such, and the megaplexes and everything else too. So that can't be left out. So what I'm talking about here, big macro picture here, is the context of things, which again, being an 80s based show, I like to try to put it there. That's why it's great that, RDV, you're in that middle age group between us, and Pixel, even though you're here in Florida, over by the mouse, you're still a generation behind me. And so it's interesting to get all these takes, because when people talk and chat about what's going on or make comments on Twitter or everywhere else, it's interesting to see what the community as a whole thinks of it. And that's why we talk film. And for me, for my final thoughts, I'll say this. I kind of liked Tom Cruise in his movies. I think he's Tom Cruise. I don't think he's a character actor. I think he's just him. Some people are that way, like Steve McQueen, and that's not a bad thing. But it really depends on getting everything built around you. Thandie Newton, I'll just say this. I kind of have joked about her. When she's on top of him in the tub and he's like, damn, you're beautiful. I can agree with that. I think she's just got zero charisma. It's completely flat, kind of like Halle Berry. But for this role, again, it was written around her limitations physically in her character, which works. So that's good too. But overall, for me, the Mission Impossible films did not take off until the third one, which when we get to that, will be interesting to talk about. Let's go around. I think, RDV, you wanted to go ahead with your final thoughts?
Well, yeah, before I get my final thoughts, there was some things I want to talk about production value with this still. So they kind of, one thing was kind of interesting. They actually offered the role to Ian McKellen, Magneto from the X-Men movie.
Yep.
They play the what's his name's commander role.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen, that's amazing.
Yeah, but he turned it down though.
Yeah.
The whole free solo climbing thing at the Dead Horse Point State Park in Utah was all Crew's idea. He insisted it, and he didn't want to safety net. But there was if you look real closely, there's a thin wire on there.
Yeah.
So the other thing it popped up yesterday. I was talking to some people about this. The whole Thandie Newton scene with her, the love making, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, she had come out recently or something like that and said something that she was comfortable with him, that he had a Woody. Dear God, who would not have a Woody? You're that close, rubbing up against some, of course.
Hey, we're professionals here. When we're kissing and we're half nude and all that, we should just be able to turn off our natural feelings. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. So.
Well, what did she actually like? What was she saying that? Oh, well, that was a little weird. It doesn't sound like she was saying that Tom Cruise needs to be king.
No. So that was in the lovemaking thing, when they're action stuff, But the other thing was that Cruise went out of his way because he was really stressed about having the whole, making the sequel actually better, because he was, EG sequels don't do as well as originals. So he actually in that scene where they're in the tub, the bathtub and there's stuff, he reversed the lines because he's upset that she had shitty lines. Whoever wrote the shitty lines, so he took the lines, that way she would look better. But she didn't like that because she got pushed into because she was insecure, and she was kind of out of her. It was basically out of her comfortable acting range. But later on, because she later on in the interview said like, oh, bless him. I really do miss him because he was trying his damnedest, you know.
Cynic in me would say she was trying to pop herself for some news and use Tom Cruise out there because it's okay to disparage Tom Cruise because of his personal religious beliefs, no matter how wacky you may think that stuff is. And then she kind of recanted. Well, you know what I really meant to say was this, and that's what happens all the time now. And I think it's just crap. You know, when you got 20 people sitting around you, you know, like porn or something like that, and you got the lights and this and that, it might be hard to perform. But you know what? It's a friggin' a sex scene. It's not like you're having real sex or whatever. If the guy's aroused, big friggin' deal. You could stop and say, hey guys, can you give us 5 minutes? I mean, for her to sit there and say that kind of stuff, I just think it's ridiculous.
Well,
it's behavior, and I can't stand that crap from actors.
She come out and said that he was actually like really interested. He actually romantically liked her, you know. And like,
but that has no bearing on the quality of the film.
No.
I don't know why we're talking about it.
No. I was just trying to put that out. Is that he went on his way to give her he kindness of heart. He gave her the better lines. Yeah. She throws him on the bus like a couple years, 20 years later.
Well, I haven't read the full interview, so I don't know the context of it because you're saying bits and pieces, but it's not the.
I will say this, and I don't name drop a lot, and I'm not going to with this, but it's similar to it. I know somebody that's dealt with Tom Cruise personally on a couple occasions, and I've never met the guy. Meaning Cruise, I don't know that, and I know this guy very well personally. And again, regardless of what you think of him and all that, he's a movie maker. That energy level that we think about, that we think is manufactured and all that, all the stuff about helping her out, all the stories people talk about how he's just awesome to work with and for, even though he might be a tyrant or whatever the negative stuff's out there. It's absolutely 100% true. The guy gives. And I think that's what people recognize is that even in Mission Impossible 2, even though John Woo directed it, he still said, I see something in this franchise. And after the third film, I think it took a much bigger jump because we had different people involved. His longtime assistant, I think Paula Wagner's her name. I think they broke up around that point, and he got more involved with McQuarrie and the group that he does most of his stuff with now. And that's not insignificant or lost on it. I don't think it's necessarily worthy to talk about in terms of this film, but in terms of context back then, what was going on, I think he was busting his ass trying to make an entertaining film.
I wasn't saying Tom Cruise did anything wrong. I was saying that maybe Thandie Newton's words were being taken and they were being twisted because I think that she could be saying that and saying, oh, well, it was kind of uncomfortable shooting that scene because he kind of had a worry at the time. But there's no saying that she was saying, oh, well, he's horrible because of this and that. And I don't see that. So I'm just saying without the full context, I'm not ready to throw her under the bus, especially when I know she is a hell of an actress. I saw all of Westworld, and she was great in it. So
all you gotta do is you look up Thandie Newton, Tom Cruise, and the first thing that pops up here is A Nightmare Working with Him. 2020 interview she did. Mm-hmm. You know, really stressed and dominant. He tries to pretend to be a nice person though, and like you said, yeah.
Yeah, and that's usually we don't talk this stuff too much because we just
Phantom Warrior. We were in the bed all day. I thought he was really aroused.
You know, next week it's going to be great because we're going to be talking about Alfred Hitchcock, and we know how he talks about actors.
Yeah.
Cattle. I don't recall ever saying that they're like cattle, but if I did, I probably did.
Ingrid Bergman came on and complained about Cary Grant having an arousal using her when they were doing their.
It's kind of funny because Cary played for the other side.
Yeah.
Or both, but that's Hollywood, right?
He was looking at the camera boy.
Called Rhames was jealous.
The grip. Oh God!
The best boy.
Oh, no, the caterer. Excuse me. I'd like to take a little bit of. Sorry.
I want to go ahead and give my final thoughts on this film. I think that there's a lot of it that's really solid, really fun. I just have some problems with it, and it goes mostly with the director, I think. So that's all.
Gotcha. RDV, your final thoughts?
The fact that this movie was taken out after the 2 weekends was taken out by Gone in 60 Seconds is a crime.
Hey, they were doing all this drifting and car chase stuff before that. Just remember.
Sweet Valley Low, blow. So
Notorious next Sunday night, guys, gals, everybody involved here in Xtreme Movie Show. Check that out. It's should be publicly available, being an old Hitchcock film. I'm sure they have no problems checking it out.
Thank you to Mary Princess and Ed for showing up, and anybody else who might be watching this in the replay. You guys are
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and I did have a request I wanted to say there for an old Shatner flick we'll talk about offline here that actually, RDV a while ago you and I had talked about, and we tabled it, but now that Pixel's here, I might bring it up just out of curiosity.
Hey, little
I think
girl,
it's
you want to
interesting.
ride?
Would you like some Sweetie's little girl? Come a little closer. Thank you, Ozzy Osbourne. Guys, have a good night. Stay extreme.